Improving on special teams is a big part of the Bills' formula in 2025. How are things shaping up entering the season? We're breaking that down today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time for a big special teams conversation, and I certainly hope that interests you. I know that a lot of people don't care that much about special teams, but you should. The Bills care a lot about it. The NFL cares a lot about it. It's a big part of winning and losing games in the NFL. And obviously, the last 2 years for the Bills, special teams have not been so good. And there's some big changes this year. And we're going to break those down for you here today. We're going to talk kicking and punting. We're going to talk about the return game, new arrivals, departures, the coaching change. Plenty to unpack here today on Locked On Bills. Quick note, still waiting on the NFL to make that Bills-Giants all-22 film available. I sent them an email. I contacted the product lead that is responsible for this. The product lead told me it was fixed yesterday. It wasn't. I went back and told him it wasn't. I showed screenshots and a video of what I was seeing on my end. I confirmed it with other people that they were having the same problem. So hopefully today we get a resolution on that, because I'm chomping at the bit to get into that tape, share my thoughts, and share some film with you guys as well. All right, let's talk special teams. Let's begin with coaching. It's a big deal here. The Bills dismissed Matthew Smiley. Had 2 bad seasons in a row. And you remember that first year he was on the job, the Bills special teams was terrific. Then 2 bad seasons in a row led to a change. In fact, last year the Bills were bottom 10 in the NFL in kick return average, opponent kick return average, EPA per punt, and field goal percentage. The only components of the Bills special teams last year that were league average or better were punt return and opponent punt return average. That's it. Goodbye, Matthew Smiley. Hello, Chris Tabor, the Bills' new special teams coordinator. Very experienced special teams coordinator. 13 years in the NFL on the job as a lead special teams coordinator. 2008 to 2011, he was the Bears' assistant special teams coordinator. 2011 through 2017, he was the Browns' special teams coordinator, and he survived 3 different head coaching changes there. 2018 to 2021, back to the Bears as the lead special teams coordinator. 2022 and 2023 as the Panthers' special teams coordinator. He was actually the interim head coach for Carolina for several weeks, and he had 1 game as the interim head coach for the Bears when their head coach, Matt Nagy, missed the game due to COVID. So this is a big-time coach. It's a special teams coordinator with a little head coaching experience, 2 different opportunities when an NFL franchise needed someone to fill in as a head coach, that they picked Chris Tabor. He's coached Joe Cribbs and Devin Hester and Phil Dawson. There's been some great results in his career. The NFL Players Association voted him as the number 2 special teams coach in 2023, and over 1,000 special teams players voted in that. And I love what Sean McDermott has said about this. He compared it to when he hired Aaron Kromer for the offensive line. And when it comes to special teams, Sean McDermott had 2 very young hires prior to this. Matthew Smiley, his first ever lead special teams coordinator job. Heath Farwell before that, his first ever lead special teams coordinator job. And I think after you do that twice and you realize it didn't get you the results that you're looking for, get the experience. Get the experience. And it was a unique situation where Chris Tabor was in Carolina, was out of football last year. He's commented on that, and he got a chance to spend a lot of time with his kids and watch a lot of football. And he's refreshed and excited for this opportunity. It feels like there's good synergy between Coach Tabor and Coach McDermott, and I'm optimistic for where this can go. And there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes with the Bills special teams units, not just when it comes to the coaching, but that is the most significant change. And that's what gives me the most hope that this can be a helpful part of the Bills operation. And the Bills have a lot of good things going for them. And you think about the margins, right? Things are tight in the NFL. Games are close. Wherever you can find an advantage, wherever you can improve, you got to take those opportunities. And you feel like, or at least I feel like, this arrival of Chris Tabor can really, really change the dynamics of this Bills special teams and have it as part of the reason why the Bills win games, as opposed to a contributing factor to some losses or making some of those wins more difficult than they needed to be. So we've got some players that are gone. Let's recap that, and then we'll dive into who the new arrivals are. Of course, Sam Martin is out at punter. The Bills released him and got some pretty good cap savings there. Hopefully the plan to replace Sam Martin is good. We'll talk about that later on. But for now, let's just acknowledge that Sam Martin not returning as the Bills punter. Quentin Morris, reserve tight end. He's gone. He's on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Quentin Morris played the second most special team snaps last year of any player. 380 Quentin Morris played. So there's a big chunk of opportunity that exists for someone else to step in. We'll talk about the candidates later on. Nicholas Morrow, the Bills reserve linebacker, he was 10th in special team snaps. Balin Spector, 13th in special team snaps, and he's officially done with the Bills. The Bills waived him, or waived/injured, and so his contract is exposed to the rest of the league to be claimed. Nobody claimed him, so he goes back to the Bills on injury reserve, and they reach an injury settlement. So Balin Spector done in Buffalo. 13th most special team snaps last year despite the injuries. And then Mack Hollins. I think there's a bit of a misconception out there about how much Mack Hollins helped the Bills on special teams. Played 130 special team snaps. That was 17th on the team. So not a ton. And I don't think that was the plan. I think he was supposed to help more on special teams. But ultimately, they needed him to be a much more significant factor at wide receiver than expected. And that took away from where he was probably slated to help the Bills on special teams. But I can tell you this about Mack Hollins' role on special teams. High leverage moments, they really needed a big stop on special teams if they had to punt or something like that. He was on the field. So he still scattered 130 special team snaps, but that was 17th on the team. And so those are your key players that are gone. There's actually quite a bit returning. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about who on this roster can step into some of those roles, the return game, the kicking, the punting. There's so much more to unpack. We'll do it here next. Folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether it's your first ever league or a veteran that's making your 1 millionth league. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years, and I love how smooth the draft day experience is. Our league's been up and running through Yahoo for a while now. It's easy to set it up. The mobile app is awesome, and the Smack Talk hits just a little different on those message boards. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back, folks. We're going to continue our special teams conversation here. Get ready for this 2025 season through the lens of special teams. So we talked about the key players that are gone. Well, there's quite a few players that are back, actually more than I expected. Reggie Gilliam's back. Played the most special teams snaps of any player on the team last year with 386. And Reggie Gilliam is good for a big special teams play every year where he's going to blow somebody up and probably force a fumble. It's good to have him back. You know, he's not a guy that has a huge role offensively, maybe 10 to 15 snaps a game. Maybe that'll uptick this year a little bit. But when you combine that with the special teams impact, you can appreciate the value that Reggie Gilliam brings to this football team. Jamarcus Ingram is back, I think. We'll see. I think there's a battle between him and Dorian Strong and Dane Jackson, probably for 2 spots. What's going to help Jamarcus Ingram is the impact that he made on special teams last year, 342 snaps. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I thought he was the Bills' best special teams player last year. He's back, 3rd most special team snaps. We'll see if he makes the roster this year. Cam Lewis is returning. 306 special teams snaps last year, 4th most on the team. And I went into camp kind of doubting if Cam Lewis was safe on this roster. Think about the arrival of Jordan Hancock. Feels like he was kind of brought in to replace Cam Lewis, but I'm not convinced that's going to be this year. Cam Lewis is still the primary backup to Taron Johnson in the slot. He's the primary dime defensive back. He's a reserve at safety. Multiple years in a row being a high-volume special teams guy. I don't think the Bills are done with Cam Lewis yet. Joe Andreessen, 5th most special team snaps. He's back, 297. There were some games that he was inactive. I think he's going to be a core player this year. He was last year, but I'm saying probably 350-plus special team snaps this coming season. I think he can be really good at it. I think about those kickoffs. That just feels like a tailor-made play for Joe Andreessen. Javon Solomon, 6th most special team snaps last year, 292 of them. It's a big deal for him. That's going to not only keep him on the roster and allow him to develop at defensive end, but it's going to get him a jersey on game day. He's going to be an active player. And we'll see how that goes when you compare it to Landon Jackson and his arrival on this team. But with the way these new kickoffs go and the kick return, I think edge players like a Javon Solomon, like a Landon Jackson, it's helpful for them. Cole Bishop played the 7th most special team snaps last year at 249. If he's the starting safety, I expect that number to go way down. But he is returning. And then Dorian Williams, number 8, in terms of special team snaps last year, 232 of them. He'll probably be back in a prominent role, maybe even more, right? If he's LB3 and not having to start as many games like he did this past year with Milano injured, I think he can play another 100 special team snaps. And I think that'd be great because I think Dorian Williams is a guy that can really have an impact there with how fast and physical he is. Good tackler too. So you've got quite a bit back. Quite a bit back. Some new coaching, and there's a lot of candidates on this roster that can fill some of those vacated snaps. So you look at that Quentin Morris departure, and you look at Jackson Hawes. And Jackson Hawes will probably have a role blocking offensively, but Quentin Morris, his departure vacates 380 special team snaps. If Jackson Hawes is going to be the tight end 3, I think he's going to have the opportunity to claim a lot of those snaps. And that blocking impact that he can make should really help on the kick return stuff and the punt return stuff as well. more candidates to fill special teams roles. I look at the wide receiver position, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that one of Tyrell Shavers, Laviska Shenault, Jalen Virgil, or Christian Wilkerson can make this roster as wide receiver 5 or maybe even 6. I feel like any one of those guys can help on special teams in different ways, but you can get snaps and impact. Landon Jackson is a player that I think can help on special teams, particularly kick and kick return. Kind of competing with Javon Solomon. I think Javon Solomon will have the upper hand there when it comes to the special teams piece. At linebacker, I do think Joe Andreessen and Dorian Williams will be big parts of the special teams formula. I do struggle beyond that to know where it comes from linebacker because Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, those guys are not going to help on special teams. Then your next two backers are Joe Andreessen and Dorian Williams. Who's the fifth backer? Is it Shaq Thompson? Probably. He probably won't help on special teams. Do the Bills keep 6 backers? Maybe. And I think if they do keep 6 backers, it's going to be Keontae Jenkins, the undrafted free agent out of Virginia Tech, over Adefwan Ulofoshio. Keontae Jenkins played a lot of special team snaps in the preseason opener against the Giants. So I think it's from linebacker, Andreessen, Williams, and then either Jenkins or Ulofoshio, depending on who makes the team. And right now, I think that's Jenkins. Looking at safety, you're certainly going to have Cam Lewis in this mix, but then one of Jordan Hancock or Derek Forrest. I think Jordan Hancock will probably be the guy that makes the team. Special teams will be a big part of his role as a rookie. And then at corner, you think of Christian Benford as a starter, and then Trey White / Max Harrison. Here's the thing about whoever CB3 is, eventually whenever Harrison's healthy and you kind of sort that out. Harrison or White, neither is going to play on special teams. So that brings Dane Jackson and Dorian Strong into the light as guys that will be asked to fill a big role there, whoever makes the team between Jackson, Strong, and Ingram. 2 of those 3 are going to be important for the special teams formula. Of course, Ingram, a big part of it last year. If he's not back, then both of those guys, Jackson and Strong, will play prominent roles for the Bills on special teams. So quite a bit back, and working through this, I felt a lot better about what the makeup of these units can look like. And that's why I love doing this work, because in my head, going into this, that wasn't the case. In my head, I was sitting here kind of stressed. Who's going to step into these roles? Putting it on paper, sorting out the thoughts, gives me a lot of optimism about who the candidates are, guys that make sense for certain roles, and how that affects roster numbers. I don't necessarily feel that same urgency that I did about where does it come from wide receiver. I feel pretty good about this. Now Chris Tabor just needs to put it all together. Coming up next, returners, kickers, punters. There's questions at all 3 spots. We're going to unpack it all here next, folks. Be sure to stick with me. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your shot for MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champion before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. Maybe you think it's Josh Allen as the repeat MVP. How about Baker Mayfield as a dark horse candidate? You can crown your champion in August. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Is it the Bills this year? Eagles to repeat? Who's your pick? Or you can parlay your division winner dark horses. Maybe you have a hunch about the NFC West. Does Denver dethrone Kansas City in the AFC West? If you have those hunches, get in on it over at FanDuel. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right. Kickers, punters, returners. That's what we're talking about in this segment. Let's start with returners. Now, Brandon Codrington is back. Is he going to make this roster? Here's what I'll tell you. I think he's the Bills' best returner. I think he's the best option the Bills have at returner. Things are complicated beyond that because I don't think he helps you from scrimmage at all. And you'd love for him to at least fill a role on the kick coverage and the punt coverage. He's just a returner. And on a deep competitive roster where you're kind of sweating out some of these decisions, does he provide enough value as just a returner? I have questions about that. But the other candidates right now don't really get me excited. As it would appear based on practices, based on that preseason opener, it's Brandon Codrington, KJ Hamler, Laviska Shenault, and Daquan Hardy. I don't have a lot of trust in KJ Hamler. I think he's had ball handling issues throughout his career, 2 goofy decisions in the preseason game. I know he's fast. He doesn't excite me. There's Laviska Shenault, who has 0 punt return experience in college or the NFL. Got a chance to do it in the preseason opener, but there's not much of a resume to point to there. Can he be the kick returner? One thing I like about Laviska Shenault is he does profile as a guy that can help you covering kicks and punts, can help you as a kick returner, maybe as a punt returner. Offensively from scrimmage, like maybe there's a pulse there. It's a lot more value to me than Brandon Codrington, although I do concede that Brandon Codrington is a superior option for the returner spot. And there's Daquan Hardy, who intrigues me quite a bit, but he had decision-making blunders last year in preseason. So right now, like those are the cast of characters in competition for this returner job. But my thought here is that in the Bills' back pocket, they have candidates. Like if it really comes down to it, Khalil Shakir can be your punt returner. And I don't really have reservations about that. I think he's awesome at it. I think he's terrific with handling the ball and making decisions. And yes, he's the Bills' number 1 receiver, but that's not like saying he's Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, right? Like Khalil Shakir is the Bills' number 1 receiver relative to the Bills. He's not going to play more than 70% of the snaps offensively. He's not going to play in 2 tight end sets. He's an 11 personnel player. I really don't have reservations about putting that on his plate. Those are real yards. People talk about hidden yards. Like they're not hidden. They're not hidden. It's right there. If you don't field a punt and you're supposed to field a punt and it hits the ground and it bounces 15 yards, that's a 15-yard loss. No, Josh Allen didn't get sacked. No, you didn't have a negative play where you ran a reverse and lost 15 yards, but it's real. It's a real 15 yards. And I think the same can be applied to the kick return situation where I think the Bills would be fine if it's Ty Johnson and Ray Davis handling that. So I do think you have Brandon Codrington. It's kind of the leader in the clubhouse. You have candidates in Hamler, Shenault, and Hardy. But if the Bills get down to it, and you're trying to sort out this picture, and put this puzzle together, I think the Bills would be happy to say, okay, Khalil Shakir, you can handle the punt return. Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, you can handle the kick return, and we don't have to deal with these options that don't really provide that much overall value. When it comes to kicking, you like to think Tyler Bass would be the answer. And after he drilled that 60-yarder against Miami, it felt like everything turned around for Tyler Bass. And then one day, Sean McDermott gets up to the podium and says, Tyler Bass will miss practice with pelvic soreness. You don't hear a lot about that in the NFL. And we're talking about a kicker. Feels like he's going to need that pelvis to be right. We don't know that much about the severity, but he hasn't really practiced in a long time. And the Bills tried out kickers and they signed one. They signed Caden Davis. Who is this guy? Caden Davis, undrafted rookie out of Ole Miss. He actually signed with the Jets after the draft. He was waived by the Jets at the end of July. Now he's with the Bills. And the Jets went with like Nick Folk, a veteran kicker. Caden Davis, he spent his first 2 college seasons at Texas A&M, transferred to Ole Miss, and at Ole Miss for 2 years, he was their primary kicker. Last 2 seasons at Ole Miss, 42 of 52 on field goals, 102 out of 104 on extra points. 14 of 18 for his career from 40 to 49, 4 out of 9 from 50 plus. I think he had a couple of 55-yarders. One thing you have to remember about college stats when it comes to kicking is it's way harder to kick field goals in college than it is the NFL. The hash marks are wider, so you have really different angles to kick from. So keep that in mind as you consider field goal make percentages from college. The one kicker that I have my eye on as a possibility, like let's say that Tyler Bass isn't going to be ready to start the season. Caden Davis is just not somebody the Bills are ready to trust. The name that I have my eye on is Younghoe Koo from the Atlanta Falcons. He's 31 years old, and he's coming off of a down year. Last year for the Falcons, he had a hip injury. He missed 9 field goals, and he was 74% on field goals last year. That's not really been the story of Younghoe Koo's career. For the previous 5 seasons, he was 87% or better, with several seasons 90% or better. But he's coming off of this down year. He's 31 with a hip injury last year. And he's got some real competition here in Atlanta. Lenny Craig is the hot name there. He's 23 years old. He's a German kicker. There's a lot of hype about this guy. He played for I think it's called the United European League of Football or something like that, where he was pretty good, getting an opportunity here with Atlanta, and there's a lot of momentum there. And I think when you consider like the Brandon Aubrey story with Dallas, I think everyone's looking for that guy. It's kind of my expectation that Lenny Craig's going to be the Falcons kicker, which means Younghoe Koo is going to be released. If that happens, the Bills should probably be interested in that, assuming Tyler Bass is, if there's any level of concern with Tyler Bass. We don't want to be sitting here week to week wondering about this pelvic soreness. And then he's behind on reps right now. He's missed like couple weeks of practice. So maybe Caden Davis is going to be the dude. Maybe it'll be Tyler Bass, but the name I'm keeping my eye on is Younghoe Koo from the Falcons. At punter, looks like it's going to be Brad Robbins. Brad Robbins, a 6th-round pick out of Michigan by the Bengals in 2023. He was the Bengals punter in 2023. And in terms of EPA per punt, Brad Robbins in 2023 was comfortably the worst punter in the NFL. 2024, he has a preseason quad injury. The Bengals have some other punter in there who was actually pretty good. And then they released him in October. He didn't punt at all last year after that. Brought into Buffalo to compete with Jake Camarda, and he beats out Jake Camarda. He's the only punter on the roster. I mean, I watched him for a week during camp. I watched him at for the preseason game against the Giants. Looks reasonable to me. Looks reasonable. I think we punt, 5 or 6 times against the Giants, and I think all but 1 or 2 of those were, I thought, pretty solid punts. You had 3 punts inside the 20 and a 53-yard average. I think that tells a pretty good story. It's one game, though, but at this point, I mean, the Bills are not going to stumble into the world's greatest punter right now. So can Brad Robbins be sufficient? Can he handle the holding duties and do a nice job with that? It feels like that's where this is headed. So there you have it. A lot of new, interesting dynamics with the Bills' special teams this year. And again, we're talking about the margins here. Want this Bills team to get over the hump. Can they get an edge on special teams this year? It certainly feels like they're positioned more, but that doesn't mean there's not questions at punter, questions at kicker, who's going to be the returner, who's going to step up. A lot that needs to play out for the Bills special teams in 2025. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.